Z, you know the chop. I.S.U.P.K. Badness no sir. Let me tell you how the badness steer. Dopey bad fly when the Glock display. Tell a boy say no try box this face. Back switch face. You know how your blood clot casket stay boy. You must see one Baptist prayer. When the map stick raise that big straight. Shot misplaced. The key them in your head stop misbehaved. Crack his face. The key never tell us we lock this place. Which locksmith anyway watch this place. War with them bunny like plastic plate. Hey, we don't play around. When you see the UPK around, we bring the fucking AK around. AR-15s and AR rounds. We don't play around. When you see the UPK around, we bring the fucking AK around. AR-15s and AR rounds. We no take drape up. We no take paint up, we no stay up. And when the next day come, we no change up. My heart them bad as them wake up. Take care bus boy, head top shake up. So tell a pussy well don't violate us. No care where you status, where you take up. Every man a killer till miss a dead face you straight up. Great stuff, one Westling bigger than NATO. Man we boss it to NATO. Only man we afraid of, that are the creator, the maker. Hey, we don't play around. When you see the UPK around, we bring the fucking AK around. AR-15s and AR rounds. We don't play around. When you see the UPK around, we bring the fucking AK around. AR-15 and AR rounds. AR-15s and AR rounds. AR-15s and let me tell you how the badness steer. Dopey bad fly when the Glock display. Tell a boy say no try box this face. Back switch face. You know how your blood clot casket stay boy. You must see one Baptist prayer. When the map stick raise that lick straight. Shot misplaced. The teeth them in your head stop misbehaved. Crack his face. The key never tell us we lock this place. Which locksmith anyway watch this space. War with them.
What's good now?
Nigga in a shredder, but however, I could never take a step back for my pleasure. Change the weather, Ruger 5.7 on my dresser, clip full with a lot of pressure. I forget that I made a special. I don't care, so I don't remember hitting treasures in my lecture. New texture, but the same message. Think rich, no think better. Chevy boy, I don't need a Porsche. Bucket clean and I feed the horse. Pull up on me, lose a bitch, ain't nothing to me. Ben Simmons, they ain't fucking with me. Take sides, you was set hopping. Heat on, you was flip flopping. On the come up, then he start watching. We open doors like fuck knocking. Yeah, she see it and then don't believe.
Hey, Shalom Israel. YAHANNA thumb. I think Salaki, I think I'm having some lag.
Baby, no listen to no fake news, them can't. Could do all it out and them never fake news. Notice say I just be a bad bitch, I get forward from with you. But the one you have to be good girl them.
Easy. She never did a features, R-rated. Never did a features, half naked. Me never did a piggy R-rated. Things halfway, that's why me give R-rated.
Testing, sound check. Testing. Okay, Salaki, let's get started. Y'all about Shema Shabrak Thumb, all the brothers. And Yahweh Shema Thumb, Shema Shabrak, all the sisters. I'm Police Officer 500 Shayuan, and the Commanding General YAHANNA. We are the I.S.U.P.K, which was started out of 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York. All right, Salaki, I'm just having a couple technical difficulties, but I think we're good to go. So tonight's class, again, this is a Monday night history class. The water for tuning in. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. All right, hit that like button. Subscribe to all the different social media platforms. All right, we're on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. All right, all the major social media platforms. All right, make sure you stay tuned in with us and share our content. All right, like, share our content. Okay, so again, this is Monday night history class every Monday night. All right, we're going to be teaching them just the history of Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. All right, doing some valuable history to our people. And tonight, specifically, we got the Feast of Hanukkah coming up this Thursday. Okay, it'll be this Thursday sundown, which I believe is the 7th. Okay, you want to make sure you're tuned in so that you can celebrate with us. All right, feast with us. It is not a high holy day. However, it is a beautiful day in our history, beautiful day to remember, a beautiful day that our King remembered. Matter of fact, let's start there. In the book of John, I think it's John chapter 10 and 22. Let me pull my screen up. Yeah, we're going to get right into it. If you go to the book of John chapter 10 and verse 22, you see where not only was this day beautiful for Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans in our history, our King, Yahushua, who the world calls Jesus, he also believed that this day was a beautiful day in our history, a day that was worthy to be commemorated, all right, a day that was worthy to have a feast with his brothers and sisters with, and to remember just our glorious day in the history of Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. This is John chapter 10 and verse 22, and it says, "And it was at Jerusalem, the feast of the dedication." Okay, this is damn near 100 and almost 200 years after Judas Maccabeus and those brothers during that time in history had retaken the temple, destroyed the Greeks. Okay, destroyed the Greeks who were known as Idumeans. All right, the Greeks being the nation of Esau. And Judas Maccabeus won a war against the Greeks, and in winning that war and winning that victory, it was a day that they rededicated the temple back to the Most High, right? Rededicated the temple that the Greeks had destroyed and desecrated. Okay, the Greeks went in there and they put up statues of Zeus and different statues of gods, and they were putting swine on top of our altars and burning it to the Lord, to the Most High, because they understood that swine was such a disgusting. That swine is an abomination, considered an abomination to the Most High. An abomination is like wicked, disgusting thing. And so the Greeks were damn near mocking our God. You understand? They were making fun of our God, mocking our God. And they were destroying something that was so sacred to us in history, so sacred to the Israelites, who we know as Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans today. And as Judas Maccabeus rededicated the temple back to the Most High, that was a day that they said that they would remember. I think it was on the 25th day of Kislev or Kislev. All right. And that day was to be remembered. So it's not a high holy day, but it is a day that we remember in history of our beautiful victory over the Greeks. Some righteous brothers who chose to stand with the Most High, regardless of what our enemies were trying to force on us. And so you see in the book of John, chapter 10, verse 22, you see our brother Yahushua, who the world knows as Jesus Christ. He was also commemorating our brothers who did such a great thing during that time under the Greeks' persecution. Okay, so this is John 10:22, says, and it was at Jerusalem, the feast of the dedication. Okay, damn near 200 years, maybe 160 something years after that temple was rededicated to the Most High. Okay, and so in the I.S.U.P.K, here we are a couple thousand years later, right? 2,000 years later, and we'll be doing the same thing come this Thursday on sundown. All right, remembering what honorable brothers did and commemorating their victory. Okay, and this story of Judas Maccabeus was such a beautiful story. And if you're Black, Hispanic, and Native American today, I really encourage you to join with us come this Thursday. Okay, we'll be holding a class live here in Toronto. Or if you're a brother or sister in the school, you already know you'll be meeting with us where we will be feasting, you know what I mean, having some good food, good drinks, all right, just enjoying good brotherhood and sisterhood. And I encourage all Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans to tune in. Okay, tune in this Thursday and learn about your history. And as you learn about our history and this day and time in our history, it's damn near impossible not to hate or dislike, have a strong disdain for these other nations and what they've done to us and what they continue to do to us today. You understand? Like, as you hear about this story in history, you're going to see that damn near the same things that they were doing to us back then, they're doing to us today. Even going back, if you go back to the book of Exodus, it might be chapter 2 or chapter 5, when Moses was going up to Pharaoh and telling Pharaoh, basically asking Pharaoh that we need a couple of days off. Right? I think maybe it's Exodus chapter 2 and verse 5 or 5 and verse 2. And Moses was asking Pharaoh, saying that we just need some days off so that we can go and worship our God. And the Israelites in that time understood that if they didn't worship the Most High in the way that he commanded them to do it, that the Most High would punish us for those things. And so Pharaoh, being a wicked and unjust ruler, you know what I mean, just persecuting the Israelites in that time, he wouldn't allow the Israelites to go and worship their God. All right, I think Christianity teaches that Moses was just asking Pharaoh to let his people go, just to be free. But Moses was asking Pharaoh Moses was telling Pharaoh that we just want to worship our God. We just need a couple days to worship our God and make sacrifices to our God. And Pharaoh said no, he wouldn't allow us to worship our God. And this is what these nations have continually done to Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans all throughout history. They understand that we're very powerful people. We're very special people. And a lot of these nations know that their rule comes to an end when we get our shit together, basically. When we get reunited with the Most High, when we have the Most High on our side and fighting our battles, fighting our wars, there's no other nation that can touch us. And those Egyptians quickly realized how powerful the Most High was. Those Egyptians quickly realized how powerless their gods were. You understand? And so did the Greeks. That's what the Feast of Dedication was about. Those Greeks quickly learned that their gods were powerless. Those Greeks quickly learned how powerful the Most High was. I think Judas Maccabeus, can't remember the exact number. Maybe they went up against around 5,000 Greeks or something like that. And they were heavily outnumbered. Okay, you can read about that in the book of Maccabees, chapter 1, I think up to around chapter 4. And you'll see that Judas Maccabeus and his men, I think in chapter 4, they were heavily outnumbered. But because they had the Lord on their side, they were able to retake Jerusalem and retake that temple and rededicate that temple. And so the only way we're able to win these battles is when we have the Lord on our side. The only way we're able to win these battles is when we're keeping our laws, statutes, and commandments, when we're upholding our side of the covenant, our side of the contract. Okay, and that contract was made between Abraham and his sons and his seed through a specific seed. That was through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that covenant that was made with the children of Israel, Most High has always been there upholding his side. And that's why you see Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans going through so much turmoil right now. Like we're in the ghettos, barrios, and reservations and destroyed as a people because the Most High is upholding the covenant. He's upholding his side of the agreement, his side of the bargain. And what he said is that if you keep these laws, statutes, and commandments, that you would be a great nation. You'd be a nation on top of every other nation on the face of the earth. A nation ruling over the world. But if you disobey me, then you would be at the bottom. Right? You can read about that in Deuteronomy chapter 28. Right? Verse 1 said that if you obey me, you keep these laws, statutes, and commandments, and I will bless you. Right? I'll give you that land flowing of milk and honey, a land full of resources and wealth. And I'll protect you and your kids, your wives, your children, your livestock. Everything you do will be blessed. What you, your businesses and what you invest in and build up on this earth. Understand, your children will get an inheritance and you'll be able to live good, abundant lives. But if you disobey me, when you get down to verse 15, he said, if you don't listen to me, I will destroy you. I will correct you. I will punish you. And I'll damn near put you through hell, just like any punishment. And so that's why we're going through a lot of the things that we're going through today. That's why we're going through everything that we're going through today. And so what the Most High wants is us to come back to him. Right? And so, yeah, this story about the Feast of Dedication, it's a very important lesson for us to learn as a people. And that lesson is that we really, truly have to separate from other nations. Like we can't be living the way these other nations live. We can't take on these other nations' culture. And throughout history, that has always been the hardest thing for Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans to do. Our downfall has always been joining ourselves to these other nations. And so, again, this Feast of Dedication, right, was just showing us what we were able to accomplish when we don't join ourselves to other nations, right? When we don't join ourselves to other nations, you'll see that there were brothers who refused to eat swine, refused to eat pork till death. They didn't care if the Most High would, these brothers didn't care if the king that was ruling over them would kill them or take their lives. They said, we're going to obey our God till death, right? And that's different from, like, for instance, a lot of you brothers who get into Islam, right? You think that being a Muslim is good for you. Well, that Quran says that that you're not allowed to eat pork, but if you're hungry and starving, go ahead and eat it. Whereas when you stick to the law of the Bible says that swine is a disgusting thing. And those brothers in Maccabees, they refused to eat swine till death. They didn't care if a king was ready to chop their heads off. They refused to eat pork. And these brothers were written down in a book because of it. Their stories were recorded about the honorable sacrifice that they made for their nation. The honorable brothers that they were. And they understood that obeying our God is more important than taking on the culture of another nation. So again, this feast is it's a very beautiful feast. It's probably one of my favorite feasts. Salakia, right? Salakia means forgive me in the Hebrew. But Feast of Dedication is definitely a beautiful story. Probably one of my favorite stories. And so you definitely want to tune in with us, all right? This Thursday, make sure you tune in with us. All right, we'll be live. And if you're a brother or sister who's not in Canada, right, I'm sure there's another school that's near you that you can tune into as well. Okay, of course, you're welcome to tune in with us, but we got schools all over. All right, we got schools out in Honduras. We got schools in the UK. Okay, we got I.S.U.P.K, Jamaica, and Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico, and we got schools all over. All right, I.S.U.P.K Haiti. All right, your brother and sister, make sure you tune in and just learn more about your history. Okay, so yeah, and the reason I'm going into so much of the Feast of Dedication, or kind of that introduction, is because tonight's class, I'm just going to give some history on, I guess, how would I put it? Not necessarily the validity, but give just some of the historical accounts of what was happening to us during that time in history. Okay, what led up to that beautiful victory that we had against the Greeks, and also to see the history of the migration of our people. Okay, because there's a lot of us today who still don't know who we are. There's a lot of us today who still don't know where we come from, who we descend from. That's why we call ourselves Black, Hispanic, and Native American, because we don't have a knowledge of self. We don't have an identity. I was listening to a YouTube video earlier, and there was a sister doing an interview speaking about, she was just speaking about her life in Japan. And she was kind of speaking to how she was bullied in Japan, and she moved back to America. And when she was in America, she was being bullied in America. I guess because she spoke Japanese or whatever it may be. And so she's kind of sharing her story, and she's speaking about how her father, she's telling the interviewer that her mother is Japanese from she names the exact place and nation and where her mother descends from. And then she says, and my father's black, because her father identifies as being black. That's what he identifies his nationality to be, which I'm not mistaken. I think that term was coined on us around the 1980s, maybe 1990s. We've had so many different bywords attributed to being black here in North and South Central America, right? Being called Negro, being called black, being called African American, African Canadian, right? Different brothers from the Caribbean islands, right? Calling yourself Jamaican, Haitian, right? All these different bywords that we coin to identify us as a people. And I thought it was kind of, I guess because I've been in the truth for a couple of years now, it was so quick for me to point out that it's crazy that we so easily can sit here, like that sister could so easily sit there and say, my mother's Japanese from so and so and so and so, but she's comfortable just saying that my dad's black, not even realizing that that's such a red flag and that there's such an issue with not having an identity. Right? We've gone into some classes about how detrimental it is to a people, right? Leading these youth and our young children, and bringing them into drugs and what was it called? What can I say, YouTube? Where you unalive yourself. All right, Salaki, I'm not sure what the correct word is, but when youth are unaliving themselves and being incarcerated at such a high rate, being such a high rate of being addicted to drugs, and just seeing our ghettos, barrios, and reservations absolutely destroyed, having such a low self-esteem. A lot of this just stems from slavery, just stems from not having an identity, not knowing who you are, not having a culture, not having your own language, but speaking the language of your slave owners, your slave masters. It's so destructive to a people. And this sister just sitting here saying, my dad's black, without even blinking, just as it's okay and it's normal and that's just who he is. It's such a sad thing for our people. So this class tonight, as we get into, just some of the migration of our people before slavery and up into slavery, you can just better help identify who we are. Okay, so we're going to start off in this article. I'm going to start off in this article. And this is from, or Salaki, I shouldn't say article. This is from some of the records of a historian known as Flavius Josephus. Okay, it's the right one. Yeah. So this is we're just gonna read through one of the chapters, not the chapter, but just a page. of a historian named Flavius Josephus. I can make that a little bigger so that you can read along with me if you want. Excuse me. Okay, this is about as big as I can make it on my screen. Okay, so this is a historian known as Flavius Josephus. Okay, and if you're a brother in the school, you should definitely already have this, but this is a book. I guess I can't show it on my screen with the green screen. Okay, but I'm going to read a quick thing out of the Zondervan's Pictorial Bible Dictionary. Okay, the Zondervan's Pictorial Bible Dictionary is just what some quote-unquote what would you call it? Archaeologists and historians have just dug up and just given different definitions of all these words that we read about in the Bible. Okay, you're a brother in the school, you should absolutely have this. Okay, it's called the Zondervan's Pictorial Bible Dictionary. And we're going to look up really quick the Feast of Dedication. Okay, so we read in the book of John chapter 10, verse 22, we see that Christ, our King, he celebrated the Feast of Dedication. Okay, he remembered this feast. Okay, this is what the Zondervan Pictorial Bible Dictionary has to say. It says, it's an annual festival of the Jews held throughout the country for 8 days, celebrating the restoration of the temple following its desecration at the hands of the Syrians under Antiochus Epiphanes, of which Josephus gives a graphic picture. The feast came on the 25th of Kislev, which today is known as December. Josephus called it the Feast of Lights. Like the Feast of Tabernacles, it was a time of pageantry and joy. It was at this feast that Jesus delivered in the temple the discourse recorded in John chapter 10, verse 22. Okay, so this historian Josephus in the Zondervan Pictorial Bible Dictionary, he left a image. Okay, he left what was called a graphic picture of what the Syrians under Antiochus Epiphanes did to the Jews. Okay, so this historian, I almost want to say was a well-known historian. Okay, and he's somebody who has a very interesting, I shouldn't say interesting, but damn near identical account of what the Bible records in the book of First Maccabees. Okay, and we're gonna read some of that. So this is from Flavius Josephus' account. Okay, this is in his 12th book, in the 5th section of his 12th book, in chapter 4. Okay, and this is what he had to say that was going on during that time. All right, and quick shout out to the chat. Shalom Nawa, shalom sis, Yahweh Shema, Thumba Shinal Shai. Water for tuning in. Make sure you hit that like button. All right, make sure you hit that like button, and make sure you share this class. All right, so this is Flavius Josephus, and he says, now it came to pass after 2 years in the 145th year, on the 25th day of that month, which is by us called Chaslu, and by the Macedonians Apellius in the 153rd Olympiad, that the king came up to Jerusalem, and pretending peace, he got possession of the city by treachery. Now, I love this right here because, again, this is a historian's account of what was going on in Jerusalem at that time. And he says that the king at that time that came to Jerusalem, he came pretending peace. I'm going to pull up a quick scripture. Let's go to Jeremiah. Go to Jeremiah chapter 8 and verse 11. Okay, this is what Jeremiah chapter 8 and verse 11 says. It reads, for they have healed the hurt of the daughter of my people slightly, saying, peace, peace, when there is no peace. That is what our oppressors do to us today. That is what these Caucasians that are ruling over us today too. We've been sitting here in North and South Central America for 500 years, and they're constantly telling us that, that this is a safe place for us. They're constantly telling Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans that we're okay here. They say things like, oh, slavery is over. Slavery was a long time ago, right? Look what they did with the natives who just found out all those dead bodies on the reservations in Canada, all those dead bodies on those unmarked graves in the residential schools in Canada. But what did they do? The Pope came over here and he apologized. He said, I'm sorry for what the Catholics did to you on those residential schools. Meanwhile, I think the Catholic Church, I forget their net worth, but I think it's damn near. I think that Catholic Church is damn near worth more than trillions. I don't know, something like $30 trillion. that Catholic Church is one of the richest organizations on earth by far. Yet no reparations, no payments, nothing given to the natives for what was done to them on those native reserves. The only thing that was done for them was the Pope coming over and apologizing and putting on one of the most disgusting things I saw is that Pope came here to Canada and put on one of the headdresses of a Native American's attire, one of their headpieces. Right? It's such a beautiful thing in our culture. And that Pope put it on his head and apologized to the natives for what was done to them. But meanwhile, nothing was done. You look at what the Jewish people went through in the Holocaust. I forget how many thousands of dollars was given to every family from the Germans. They're still putting people in jail. They're putting like 90-something-year-olds in jail for crimes done on the Holocaust some 60 years ago. You understand? They were given an entire land to where they could go live in peace and establish themselves as a nation and build up their own government and military. And they're sent to this day billions of dollars every year from the US. They're sent billions of dollars from Canada, right? Even to help fund their war over in Israel and Hamas. They're being sent billions of dollars constantly, different aid to help them to restore and build themselves up as a nation. What were the native Indians given for all the crimes that have been done to them, done to our people here in North and Central America? It says, for they have healed the hurt of the daughter of my people slightly. They heal us slightly by apologizing, but that doesn't fix anything. They heal us slightly by saying peace. Everything's okay. Let's all get along. Let's all hold hand in hand. When there is no peace, because they're over on those reserves holding shotguns to their head to get off the land so that they can build pipelines and tear up their land and do whatever it is they want to do to continually destroy our people. What was it said in Canada? They have over 200 treaties that they made with the North American Indians. They haven't kept one treaty, not one. Broken every single one of them. This is the spirit of Esau. This is the spirit of our oppressor. Okay, the Caucasian man. That's his spirit. Right. There's a saying that history repeats itself. And that saying is very biblical. Right? It says in the Bible that there's no new thing under the sun. Because reincarnation is real. People that are here today were here 3,000 years ago walking the earth. And that spirit that's in us is that same spirit that is here today. So how those Europeans were ruling over in Greece 2,000 years ago is the same thing that they're doing today. It's the same people. It's the same spirit. And so this historian's account is so on point. Right? It's so on point because, and what did he say? He says that the king that came up to Jerusalem and pretending peace, he got possession of the city by treachery. Isn't that how the Europeans got North and South Central America? They came over to Canada and they're sitting here trying to trade fur and different things with the native Indians who are here on this land. And as they're here trying to set up different trade colonies, and as they're here being taught by the natives on how to live on the land and cultivate the land and grow food and different things like this, the natives wanted to live with you in peace. They didn't care that you were on this land. But you decided to turn around and slaughter the native Indians. That's why you people who celebrated, just finished celebrating Thanksgiving, that's such a disgusting thing to do. You have stories of Europeans cutting women's heads off and playing soccer with their heads. That's how Canada and North America, Canada and the Americas was taken. It's taken over by slaughter. It was taken over by treachery. Okay, it was taken over by guile and deceit. Right? What this brother said, or this historian said, is so on point with the spirit of Esau. Okay, this king came up to Jerusalem and he was pretending peace. and he got possession of the city by treachery, at which time he spared not so much as those that admitted him into it, and on account of the riches that lay in the temple. But led by his covetous inclination, for he saw there was in it a great deal of gold, and many ornaments that had been dedicated to it of very great value. Right? Doesn't it say in the book of Obadiah, I think it's around verse 4 or verse 5, did Esau steal until he had enough? Right? Even a thief would have left behind some grapes, but not Esau. Right? When just a normal thief, when he comes in, he's hungry, he wants some food. A thief comes into a house, I mean, he steals a couple of things that he sees will get money, or that will get him money. Or he'll steal he might go into a house and steal a laptop and a TV, might find some jewelry and steal it, and the thief is gone. Try to sell the jewelry, maybe pawn a ring, pawn some jewelry. Maybe he makes himself $200, $300. That's what a normal thief does, but not Esau. That's what it says in Obadiah. Esau comes into a house and cleans it dry. You walk into your house, there's not a sock laying on the floor. That's the spirit of Esau. That's what it says in Obadiah. Right, and this is what this historian's account of this king and what these people did when they came to Jerusalem. It said, for he saw there was in it a great deal of gold and many ornaments that had been dedicated to it of very great value. And in order to plunder its wealth, he ventured to break the league he had made. Okay. It says, so he left the temple bare. Right? Isn't that what I just said? He came in, he left it bare. Took everything out the temple. Right? He left the temple bare and took away the golden candlesticks and the golden altar of incense and table of showbread and the altar of burnt offerings, and did not abstain from even the vials, which were made of fine linen and scarlet. He also emptied it of its secret treasures and left nothing at all remaining. Good night. Actually, matter of fact, let me pull up that verse. I don't think I did that verse justice. And I was just paraphrasing that verse, but let me pull that out because when I read through this Bible, I absolutely love reading through this Bible, right? Like Christ said, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Understand? And when you read through this Bible and you learn the truth, start learning the truth about life, it brings such clarity to everything that's going on in this world. Right, this is what it says in Obadiah chapter 1 and verse 5. Right? And this is the vision of Obadiah. Right, verse 1, it says, the vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord God concerning Edom. Okay, so this vision that Obadiah had was concerning Edom, the nation of Esau. Okay, sometimes known as Idumea in the scriptures. Right, this is one of the things that he saw. Right. It says in verse 6, how are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? The way you search out Esau is by going through these scriptures and learning the truth about who this man is. Learning the truth about the Caucasian race, who they are, who they descend from, and what their spirit is on this earth. Right? This is what it says in verse 5. If thieves came to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? Would they not have stolen till they had enough? That's what a normal thief does. He steals until he has enough. That's what a normal thief does, but not Esau. That's not the spirit of Esau. Esau comes in and he leaves nothing, just like that historian said about what that king did when he came to Jerusalem and he destroyed that temple. Right? Not even the linen. He took the linen of the temple. You understand? That's the spirit of Esau. And this historian is so on point with his records of what took place during that time. He says, and he left nothing at all remaining, and by this means cast the Jews into great lamentation. For he forbade them to offer those daily sacrifices which they used to offer to God according to the law. All right? And this is what these other nations always do to us. Right? That's the same thing that Pharaoh did. Moses was asking Pharaoh to leave us alone so that we could worship our God. And Pharaoh said, nah, you slaves got to go to work. You guys aren't allowed to take a day off. You got work to do. You understand? And this historian is saying the same thing. This is what these Greeks did. He said, for he forbade them to offer those daily sacrifices which they used to offer to God according to the law. Yeah, which is such a heavy thing. And again, this is why this Thursday you should stay tuned in and learn about what the Feast of Dedication was. Right? Learn about that day in history. And this is really the fight that Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans got to overcome today. Because being here in Canada, they do not want you to worship your God. They don't want men. They don't want Black, Hispanic, and Native American men. They don't want us to practice our culture. They don't want us to practice polygamy. They don't want us to correct our children and discipline our children. You understand? They don't want us to do all sorts of things in this kingdom, all sorts of things in Canada that have to do with us worshiping our God and keeping our culture. That's why in those residential schools, they're sitting there cutting off the braids off of Native Indian children. This is why they were beating Native Indian children for speaking their language. Why? Because they don't want you to keep your culture. Shoot, I remember when I first turned around 18 years old, and I was running a business. I remember one of the first things I thought as I was starting to do a little better in business was to shave my hair. Shave my hair, cut off my braids so that I could look quote unquote professional. Which is such a wicked and disgusting thing as a man, shameful thing as a man to cut your beard off. Cut your beard off and to get your hair lined up. You understand? These are things that go against our culture. But for some reason, I thought I just looked professional doing this. Something about getting a line up and shaving off my beard would help me do better in business. And I know that story rings true for a lot of brothers I spoke to in Canada. A lot of brothers in Canada think that they can't have their own hair or have their own hairstyles when they get a job. They think that they got to shave their beard in order to look a certain way to be able to keep their jobs. Shoot, for me being in Canada, That was one of the reasons I loved getting into construction, because it didn't matter what my hair looked like. It didn't matter if I had a beard. And so I thought that I could be more of myself. I thought that being in construction fit more of my personality. It's such an evil thing to teach a people. To actually have to teach our children that, well, your hair is beautiful the way it looks. And you're black and beautiful, and there's nothing wrong with your skin color, and there's nothing wrong with your hair. Such an evil thing to do to a people. And so this nation that's oppressing us, been oppressing us for damn near 500 years, they don't want us to take on our own culture. And that's the same thing that those Europeans were doing to us over 2,000 years ago. Okay, it said that he forbade them to offer those daily sacrifices which they used to offer to God. Right? And another side note, that don't be surprised here in Canada where they make a rule or they start making some laws saying that you're not allowed to read the Bible. Canadian government would love to do that. And we've actually seen that in the I.S.U.P.K, where we go out on Saturdays and we're teaching at downtown Toronto. And we have police officers threatening to arrest us for reading the Bible. It's exactly what, and meanwhile, they have, I think that was during the gay pride parade, and you got these people walking down the street half naked in front of little children as if they're not doing anything wrong. They're damn near having orgies in the middle of the street, doing all sorts of disgusting things. But we're sitting here reading the Bible, telling Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans that you shouldn't be drug dealers, to get off drugs, that you shouldn't be alcoholics, that you shouldn't be smoking cigarettes, that you shouldn't be divorcing your wives. That's what we're on the streets teaching, and these police officers are threatening to arrest us. It's exactly what those Europeans were doing 2,000 years ago. Right? He forbade them to offer those daily sacrifices which they used to offer to their God, according to the law. Because Esau doesn't want us to keep the law. Right? Esau passes laws to say that it's okay to be a drug addict. It's okay to smoke weed. He has safe injection sites all throughout the city of Toronto, all throughout Canada, where you can shoot up, you know what I mean, whatever heroin, whatever drug that you want to take, and you can sit there and safely inject it and safely, quote unquote, safely in Canada get high. Because the Europeans, they don't want you worshiping your God. They don't want you serving your God. They're okay if you're Christian. They're okay if you're Muslim. But it is not okay to come back to these laws, statutes, and commandments. All right. Goes on to say, this historian goes on to say, and when he had pillaged the whole city, right, this is the king that pillaged Jerusalem, and when he had pillaged the whole city, some of the inhabitants he slew, and some he carried captive, together with their wives and children, so that the multitude of those captives that were taken alive amounted to about 10,000. He also burnt down the finest buildings, and when he had overthrown the city walls, he built a citadel in the lower part of the city. For the place was high and overlooked the temple, on which account he fortified it with high walls and towers, and put it into a garrison of Macedonians. However, in that citadel dwelt the impious and wicked part of the Jewish multitude, from whom it proved that the citizens suffered many and sore calamities. And when the king had built an idol altar upon God's altar, he slew swine upon it, and so offered a sacrifice neither according to the law. Right? Which is heavy, because this historian is literally recording what is recorded in the book of Maccabees. Okay, this feast of dedication that we're getting ready to celebrate, right? This historian is saying that that these people absolutely destroyed God's altar. They made a mockery of the Jews. They made a mockery of the Israelites. Understand? And in that temple, the king built his own altar upon God's altar. He built an idol in there. Right? He put Zeus inside of that temple. He put his different gods and their statues inside of that temple. And he put swine on top of that altar and offered a sacrifice neither according to the law. Right? Which is such a disgusting thing to do. Right? Just to spit on God's chosen people and to spit on what the Most High said was holy. Holy means set apart or sacred, right? Something special, something different. Right? This is exactly what took place. This is exactly what that king did during that time. Okay, it's so right, it's so true. And this is why it's also so important for Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans to get themselves a proper Bible, right? Get themselves a 1611 King James Bible, because that holds what is known as the Apocrypha in the Bible. And in that Apocrypha are the records, some historical records of the children of Israel. Right, we see in John 10:22 where Christ was celebrating the Feast of Dedication. The only place you learn about that history is in the book of Maccabees. You're only going to find that in the Apocrypha. Okay, you need a 1611 King James Bible that has an Apocrypha, that has the book of Maccabees, and then you can truly, you'll better understand the history of Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Right? There's some people who read in the Bible, some of them wonder, where did the Jews go? Right? Where did that nation go? Well, you're missing parts in history when you don't read that part of the Bible. You don't read the book of Maccabees. And this historian right here, he's giving you, he's going to give you a lot of the history of the Jews. It's telling you what took place during this time. Okay? And as we get through this, I'll speed up a little bit just to see some of the migration of Blacks going from Jerusalem into parts of Africa. Okay, and we'll get to that as we keep going. Okay? So again, this is Flavius Josephus. This is his account, which is so right and so true, just matching up with the book of Maccabees. He says that they offered a sacrifice neither according to the law, nor the Jewish religious worship in that country. He also compelled them to forsake the worship which they paid their own God, and to adore those whom he took to be God. Right? So not only did he destroy and desecrate this temple, right, but he also told those Jews that he took into captivity that they need to worship his gods, right? That's just like in 2023, them telling you to worship that white Jesus. They're telling you to be a good Christian. You understand? When nowhere in the Bible is that depiction of Christ in there. You understand? That picture that they have today of who they call Christ was actually Slacky. I don't want to get us banned off YouTube. But he was living a very disgusting life. What was his name? Oh, Slacky. His name was tip of my tongue. I forgot it. I shouldn't forget that. But it was a depiction of some white boy. Shoot, Slacky. Maybe in the chat you can get me right. Right. Shout out to La Piraneta, Yabashim Shabakatha. Oh man. Yeah, when it comes back to me, I'll share that name. But anyway, that depiction of who they have as Christ today is not the depiction of Christ. Right? When you read Book of Revelation, you see that Christ was a black man. You see that Christ was a very dark-skinned brother. And all throughout the Bible, you see that the Jews are dark-skinned people, different shades of brown. Right? You have some light-skinned, dark-skinned, but they are different shades of brown. They are a colored race of people. And so to have the depiction of Christ as some white boy is such a disgusting thing. And that's what they want Blacks, Hispanics, and Natives to be. That's why they had you in residential schools. They want you to be good Catholics, good Christians. They want you to take on that ideology that God loves everybody. They want you to worship their God. They don't want you to worship the God of the Bible. Okay, it says, and made them build temples and raise idol altars in every city and village, and offer swine upon them every day. Good night. And so they wanted the Jews, they wanted the Israelites, they wanted Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans to spit in the Most High's face by offering swine upon these altars that they build. And said he also commanded them not to circumcise their sons. Right, which is so heavy. Let me share a quick verse in the book of Maccabees. Go to the book of First Maccabees, chapter 1. I'm just going to read a couple verses here, right? Which is so heavy. That historian just said that, and the king commanded them not to circumcise their sons. Okay, now check this out. This is let me see. The book of First Maccabees, chapter 1 and 1. It said, and it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chedum, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece, verse 2, and made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth. Okay, so this is the Bible's account of what took place during that time. Okay, so we read a little bit of Flavius Josephus. And that last part I thought, well, there's more. We'll see. We'll get into that depending on the time. But he said that king commanded them not to circumcise their sons. Okay, check this out. It says, let's go to verse 11. Right, so first we see in verse 1 and verse 2, it said that there was this king Alexander, right? And, he went around the earth. He won many wars, right? Verse 2 said, and made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth. So we see that this king of the Greeks who rises up, he's this powerful nation of Greeks, powerful in war, and they're going around winning wars all throughout the earth. Okay, they're going around defeating other nations, just slaughtering all different nations and people, and they're winning all these different wars. Right? It says, and he slew the kings of the earth. He went around, right, just going around killing all different nations' presidents and different nations' kings and leaders. Okay, he went around conquering the earth, right? Let's jump down to verse 11. It says, and in those days there out of Israel wicked men. Right, that's exactly what Flavius Josephus said. He said that there were wicked men, wicked Israelites in that time. Okay, who says, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. Okay, that's what Flavius Josephus said. He said that there were Israelites that said, let's go look and make peace with the heathen. Right, because these Israelites saw that this king was going around just taking over the earth. Okay, and so these wicked Israelites were also probably cowards. Okay, they were very fearful, they were cowardly, and they wanted to go make a covenant with the heathen. Okay, that's what a lot of us here in North and South Central America are doing today. You know. So let's go talk to Billy and see what we can work out and how we can live in peace here in North and South Central America. Let's go join their government and join their politics, and let's see if we can just reason with them. That's what a lot of us here in Canada and America do. And we try to reason, we try to make a covenant, an agreement, a deal with the heathen. Okay. And the Bible calls them wicked men because that's something that goes against our God. Okay, we're to be holy, we're to be separate from these other nations. We're in a covenant with our God, not in the covenant with men. Okay, it says, in those days went out there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. Verse 12, so this device pleased them well. Verse 13, then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Okay, so these Israelites didn't like the way that life was going. And so they wanted to basically go back to daddy. They wanted to go back to their oppressor, and they wanted to go where they were comfortable, okay, where they wouldn't be destroyed and oppressed. And they wanted to try to get the best life that they could have living under this king. Okay. Let's jump down to verse 14. It says, whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen. Verse 15, and made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen. Now, these Israelites understood that if they listened to daddy, if they listened to their oppressor, they listened to that king, that they might have some quote unquote better life under that king's oppression, under that king's rulership. And those wicked Israelites said, we won't circumcise our children. We won't circumcise our son. We'll forsake the holy covenant. We'll disobey our God. and they joined themselves to the heathen. You understand? This is so on point with Flavius Josephus's records of the history during that time. Okay, because that king was forbidding them to circumcise themselves, and it says that same thing in the Bible. Okay, he forbade them to circumcise themselves, and so the different Israelites, our different brothers and sisters who, you know, they wanted to live a good life, quote unquote, live a good life. You know what I mean? Just living off the crumbs of their oppressors. They said, we're willing to obey you. Right? We understand that you don't want us to circumcise ourselves, that you want us to throw away our customs, and that's what those Israelites did. Right? And so let's close that. But I was just showing a quick part in the book of Maccabees, just showing, you know, Flavius Josephus's records are so on point. Let's see if there's anything else in that record, and then I'm going to share something else real quick. All right. So going on, he says that he commanded them not to circumcise their sons, and threatened to punish any that should be found to have transgressed his junction. Right. Actually, Select, let me bring up one more verse. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Let's get First Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 60. That's what I want. Yeah, let's get one more verse just to show this record of Flavius Josephus is so on point with the Bible. So let's get First Maccabees chapter 1. Okay, this is verse 60. We'll start at verse 59. It says, Now the 25th day of the month, they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of God. At which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised. And why did they put to death those women that had their children be circumcised? Because the king commanded or forbade the children of Israel, blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, to circumcise their children. You understand? And that's exactly what Flavius Josephus was saying. Okay, and that going through the book of Maccabees, right, and reading about, right, that time in history of Israelites during that time, you see that's where that whole concept of the Hellenized Jew came from. Right? When you read throughout the New Testament, when you see, like, for example, the verse that says there's now neither Jew nor Greek, right? That word Greek is Helena, right? That Helena, to be Hellenized. You're a Hellenized Jew, meaning you were a black man that took on the customs of the Greeks. You understand? And that's who Christ came back to save. Christ came to save the children of Israel. Right? So he came to save those that were lost, the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Those Jews that were living in Greece were lost because they had lost their culture. They lost their identity. They didn't have any knowledge of self. They didn't know who they were, or they just weren't living according to the traditions of their forefathers. They weren't keeping the law, statutes, and commandments of the Bible. And so they were considered to be heathens. They were considered to be Gentiles because they weren't keeping their customs, just like Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans are doing today. We took on the customs of our oppressors. All right, so it says in Flavius Josephus that, where was it? He had also commanded them not to circumcise their sons. Yeah, that's exactly what the king did, according to history, and threatened to punish any that should be found to have transgressed his injunction. He also appointed overseers who should compel them to do what he commanded. And indeed, many Jews were who complied with the king's commands, either voluntarily or out of fear of the penalty that was denounced. And that's exactly what the book of Maccabees said, right? You had wicked Jews. You had wicked Jews who, you understand, they were either in fear out of the penalty that what the king would do to them, or they did it voluntarily because they thought that there was something that was good for them that they would obtain from this king. Right? It says, but the best men and those of the noblest souls did not regard him, but did pay a greater respect to the customs of their country than concerns as to the punishment which he threatened to the disobedient, on which account they every day underwent great miseries and bitter torments. For they were whipped with rods, and their bodies were torn to pieces, and were crucified while they were still alive and breathed. Right? And this is what righteous, honorable brothers did. They weren't afraid of death. They didn't care if they would be tortured. They didn't care, you understand, what these different nations of the heathen would do to them. And nothing came between them and the Most High. There wasn't anything that they were willing to give up when it came to serving their God. And these were honorable men, right? This historian says that they were noble souls. He says the noblest souls, right? And this is what we have to do, Black man, Hispanic man, Native American man today. Right? We can't be afraid of persecution. Understand? We can't be afraid of being in this truth. We can't be afraid of wearing our shields, of wearing our maganda wadas around our neck. Okay, we can't be afraid of, you know what I mean, not shaving our beards, you know what I mean, and taking on the culture of our ancestors. You understand? That's what the Most High is looking for. The Most High is looking for noble, honorable brothers who aren't going to throw away their customs, who aren't going to throw away their culture. And there were brothers back then who did that. There were brothers back then who they didn't care what the heathen said. They were going to serve their God. They were going to serve their power. It says they also strangled those women and their sons, whom they had circumcised, as the king had appointed, hanging their sons about their necks as they were upon the crosses. Okay, so this king was strangling women and their sons, okay, for disobeying the king's order. The king said that you were not allowed to circumcise your son. You understand? And him being just a disgusting sexual deviant, how are you even going to check to see if a child has been circumcised or not? I mean, that's such a sick thing to command the people not to do and to try and enforce that. You're going to go around looking at what gets done to a little child's body parts. And in doing so, you go around hanging women and children. This is who Esau is. This is what he does. He has no moral standard, no sense of any morals or any morality at all. Okay. This historian goes on to say, and if there were any sacred book of the law found, it was destroyed. And those with whom they were found miserably perished also. And that's also what it says in the book of Maccabees. Let's see if I can pull that verse up. I'll pull it up really quick. Let's go to the book of First Maccabees. I believe this is what I want. All right, so Flavius Josephus says that they destroyed the book of the law. They destroyed our sacred book. All right, according to that historian. And this is what it says in the book of First Maccabees, chapter 1 and verse 56. Let me read up a bit. Verse 54 says, now the 15th day of the month's castle in the 100th, 40th, and 5th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar. Excuse me, and builded idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side. Right, that's exactly what Flavius Josephus said. They had gone around the city building up these idols, and they had destroyed the altar. You understand? They put swine on that altar. All right. It goes on, verse 55 says, and burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. Verse 56, and when they had rent in pieces the books of the law which they found, they burnt them with fire. You understand? This is what that king did, and that's what Flavius Josephus said. So that the king had destroyed the book of the law. They had destroyed their holy book, their sacred book, right? The Israelite sacred records. That's exactly what this Bible is. And those are sacred records. You understand? And it says in Maccabees, they burnt them with fire. Right? They destroyed our books. And so this is why, again, it's so important. We need that Apocrypha. You understand? It's a part of our history. And this historian is recording the things that happened to us. He's so on point. You understand? His account right there is damn near identical to the account that we read in the book of Maccabees. Okay? So again, this Thursday, make sure you tune in with us. Make sure you tune in with us and really learn what took place during that time in history. Okay, it's probably one of my favorite feasts, one of my favorite stories that we read about in the Bible. Right? It's one of my favorite days in our history. And it's so on point with what's happening with us today. It's so on point. History really is repeating itself. Okay. So let's just jump through a little bit for time's sake. So we see Flavius Josephus's records, right? We see him giving a damn near identical account to the history of the Jews during this time. Okay, and then we see in the book of Maccabees giving an account of the Jews during this time. Okay. So we see this historical record matching up, right? We see this historical record of blacks, okay, matching up with certain times in history. A lot of people looking at the Bible like it's some fantasy, mythical story, when this Bible is so true and right on point, where it's recording the history of what took place with us. It has the records, the historical records of blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. And so what we're going to segue into, just to keep on with the history, right? So we see this this time in history of the Greeks ruling. We see this time in history where the Greeks have, not only did they destroy other nations and go around just winning a lot of wars on the earth, we see this time in history that the Greeks won a war against the Jews, against Israel. Okay, he also conquered the Jews, and he went in and he destroyed and did many disgusting things to our sacred temple, okay, to the different things that we deem sacred and we hold to like a high standard. You understand? And so this takes place in history. And now let's jump to another historian. Okay, I can't share this on my screen, but I'm going to be reading from a book called Babylon to Timbuktu. Okay, this is another book that brothers in I.S.U.P.K, every brother should have this book. Let me see if I can share a link. Share a link to the book. Or maybe what I'll do is just share this picture. So you can see what the book looks like. Okay. So this is another historian. Okay, I'll give a quick biography of him. Okay, this is a book from Babylon to Timbuktu. Okay, it's written by a brother named Dr. Rudolph R. Windsor. Okay, he was born in Long Beach Branch, New Jersey. After living in a number of Jersey communities, his family settled in Philadelphia, where he attended community college, studying psychology and political science. He continued his education pursuits at Gratz College, majoring in Hebrew Aramaic studies, Temple University, where he majored in Middle Eastern studies, and the University of Metaphysics, where he received his PhD in metaphysical philosophy. Okay, so this is another historian. Okay, and we're going to read about what he has put together, speaking on what happened in the Jews of this time. Okay, so in his book, how are we doing for time? So in his book, when you go to page 83, okay, he has a section called the North African Black Jews. Okay, I'll read a couple parts. I'm going to skim down and then I'll get down to some of the parts that I wanted to read. So he says, in the year 331, that Alexander the Great defeated the Persian emperor. Okay, so here we see this brother, or this man named Alexander again, in this time of history. Okay, and many people have heard of Alexander the Great, and you've probably heard of him through the eyes of Europeans' view on who he is and who he was. And so they have always said that he was some great king who went around winning a lot of wars. Well, we also read in the book of Maccabees, we see that we also have a record of quote unquote Alexander the Great. Okay, Flavius Josephus, he was also recording about Alexander and what he did during his reign, and his sons after that, and the people that he put in power after that. Okay, we see what that Greek nation did. So this brother here says in the year 331 that Alexander the Great defeated the Persian emperor Darius at the Battle of Gaugamela. A new master emerged on the world stage and transformed the history and culture of 3 continents. Okay, so we see that, he went around again conquering all the earth. I'm going to jump down to the next chapter. He says, after the death of Alexander, his vast empire was divided amongst his generals. Right, that's exactly what Flavius Josephus said, and that's exactly what the book of Maccabees said. I believe in 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 2. Okay, or verse 1 and verse 2. It says Ptolemy received Egypt and Seleucus received Asia. Right, I'm going to jump down. So that's that chapter again. Just again, these records are all aligning with each other. Okay, this historical record is all aligning with each other. So let's jump down. He says, when Antiochus IV usurped the throne in Syria, this is in around the year 175 to 163 BC, he entered the thought of uniting Alexander's empire. This meant the conquest of Egypt. However, the province that bordered on Egypt was Palestine, which stood in his way. At this time, the Jews would not accept Greek culture. Nevertheless, Antiochus was determined to Hellenize the Jews. And again, this is what that New Testament is speaking on a lot of the times where you see Gentile. Understand? Because Christ was in Rome. This was the time where the Greeks and the Romans had gone around conquering the earth. And the Europeans kind of grew in power. Okay, the Caucasian man grew in power. And what did he say? He said that the Jews would not accept Greek culture, right? Because this is all throughout the Bible where it's so important that we do not take on the culture of other nations. That is the main lesson you can learn from reading the Bible. You understand? That was right from when Adam first fell. You understand? Eve went and spoke to that man, and that man was telling her, you understand, the ways of his nation, the ways of his culture. You understand? And how his way of life was good. And so Eve fell for that, being naive, and you understand, just kind of being naive and being carnal, you understand, and not following the obedience and listening to the rule of her man, you understand, going against her power. She went on and was interested in living a different lifestyle from the culture of her own. Right? We have always had that issue as a people. And so this historian is saying that the Jews would not accept Greek culture because we had fallen so many times before. We understood that we had to keep our culture. Our culture is such a beautiful culture. Right? It goes on to say the army of Antiochus marched into Palestine to support Menelaus, the leader of the pro-Syrian party. As a result, many Jews were killed. Others escaped to the hills and to Egypt. Only those Jews that supported Antiochus' policies remained in Jerusalem. And there's those wicked Jews that the book of Maccabees was speaking about. There's those wicked Jews that Flavius Josephus was speaking about. There were Jews there who went and made a covenant with the heathen. You understand? And then there was other Jews who said, we're going to keep our culture. Right? He says, an edict was promulgated interdicting the observance of the holidays, the Sabbath, and circumcision. A statue of Jupiter was erected in the holy temple above the altar. Right? And again, this is right here. You're gonna learn about the Feast of Dedication. Okay, this whole time in history, it all adds up. Okay, this whole time in history all adds up, and we're gonna see the migration of the Jews as we read throughout this book. Okay, so you see where they're erecting statues on the altar, right? They're erecting these different gods inside the temple of the Most High, desecrating the temple, right? They're offering that swine in the temple, right? These records are all on point. He says, to this statute, the people brought the sacrifices of pig meat, the animal which is an abomination to the Jews, right? Just like I said, they brought that swine, they put it on the altar, understand, and they offered it to the Most High. Because of this religious persecution, the legitimate high priest, Onias III, and many other Jews fled into African countries such as Egypt, Ethiopia, and Cyrenaica. How do you pronounce that? Cyrenaica, okay, which he has in brackets, is known as Libya. Okay, so we had Jews, okay, who were fleeing Jerusalem, okay, because they didn't want to make a covenant with the heathen, like it says in Maccabees, like it says in Flavius Josephus's records. You had Israelites who didn't want to join with the heathen. And so this historian says, so they fled into places like Egypt, Ethiopia, and Libya. It says throughout the last 2,500 years, the main factors that have contributed to the social migration of the Jews were wars, religious persecution, and commerce. All these factors were operating and gave rise to the African Jewish population. Okay, so this brother is saying African Jewish population because just because you're an Israelite and you flee into Africa, it doesn't mean you're African. Just because you're Chinese and you move to Canada doesn't mean you are Canadian. Just because you're Japanese and you move to America doesn't mean you're American. You don't lose your nationality because you move to another continent. You don't lose your nationality because you migrate. And that's something that we got to understand, Black man, Hispanic man, Native American man. Okay, and we're going to keep bringing out history to help understand who we are. Okay, so you had Jews who migrated into Africa because they were fleeing those armies. They were going into Africa because they didn't want to take on the culture and throw away their culture to take on that Greek culture, right? And so this historian saying African Jewish population. Okay, they are not African. They moved and migrated to these different places in Africa because they didn't want to be persecuted. Okay, so now here's the part that I wanted to highlight. It says in the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter. So now you have this time in history, okay, where Roman armies absolutely destroyed the Jewish state. They absolutely destroyed Jerusalem. They went in there, it says, with great slaughter, okay, killing thousands of Jews. Okay, this is what that Roman army did. And it says, during the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrageous and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery. So now we see that there is this mass migration of Jews, right? This historian is recording that over 1 million fled into Africa. You understand? And this brings us to some of the history that is already quote unquote widely known and understood, and it's the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, so we see this time in history where you have millions of Jews fleeing into Africa. All right, let me see if I can share one more thing. Right, so again, we have this time where you have over 1 million Jews, right? Quote unquote, 1 million Jews who flee into Africa. Okay. So let me share my screen, share one more thing. Okay, so we have this time where over 1 million Jews flee into Africa. Okay. And so we see this time in history, right, that happens, right? We have it recorded in the Bible in the book of Maccabees, right? We have records from Flavius Josephus, right, a historian during that time who has his records of what took place, right? We have this other historian here, Rudolph Windsor, right, giving some of his accounts of what took place during that time and what took place to the Jews during that time. And we see that they fled into Africa because they were trying to flee Roman persecution. Okay. And so now we see that there's this mass migration of Israelites that go into Africa, right? Speeding it up to the 1400s and 1500s, where you now start having quote unquote black slaves coming over to the Americas, right? And if you can see on this map, this you can see on this map, maybe it's in the best map. I can't zoom in on it too well, but no, hold on, let me find a good map. Should have one here that we can show. because these are some maps now. Just want to see if I can make it big enough. So now we have some maps now in the 1500s that are also agreeing, right, with this record of history. If I can just make it bigger. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just share this link. Share this link so that if you're watching, you can check out this link. All right, you can pull up the image yourself, but what you'll see is, so what you can probably see just from my screen, if you can see where it says Gold Coast and see where it says Slave Coast. So now what you have is, there's something called a cartographer. What a cartographer is a map maker. Okay, cartographer is another word for a map maker. And so now in the 1500s, 1400s, 1500s, you have cartographers who are going around making maps. And what they used to do many times is, especially during that time, is they would name the land that they were in according to the kings that were ruling it. Okay, and here you can see that cartographers or map makers, where it says Slave Coast, they have it titled Kingdom of Judah. Okay, it says Kingdom of Judah. And this is where you have black slaves being transported in the slave coast over throughout North and South Central America. You have them being dropped off, many being dropped off in over in Brazil, and then from Brazil up to different Caribbean islands. Okay, dropped off all throughout Caribbean islands. Okay, and all the way up to North America. Okay, so again, this feast that's coming up this Thursday, it plays a big mark in the history of the Jews. It plays a big mark in the history of Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Okay, and you can see our migration over different periods in time. Okay, you can see us over in Rome. You can see us in Greece. Right, you can see us in Jerusalem or under that Roman rule. And then you see many of us, right, like that historian says, over 1 million of us fleeing into Africa so that we continue to keep on our customs. Okay, so these historians are right on point with the migration of Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Okay, and more particularly in this migration is majority of what we know today as who are Blacks, right, being the Kingdom of Judah. That Kingdom of Judah entailed Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Okay, that was the majority of who were dwelling in those lands. So the majority of us who we know today as being either Haitian, Jamaican, Trinidadian, quote unquote African American, right? This is who majority migrated over here into Africa. Okay. So let's get one more thing. We'll do one more thing, and then we'll end up the class. Okay. So we'll read one quick thing. This is This is a quick article on Christopher Columbus. Let me, we got a little time. Let me share the other one quick. All right, just to give a little more information. So this is an article from the Linguistic Education Online. Okay. And this is just some records on Christopher Columbus. I feel like that's really small on my screen. All right, a little loud, you can kind of read with me. So I want to check out this one part in this article. It says, in the year 1492, Christopher Columbus's landing in the Bahamas changed the world forever. It helped establish trade routes between North America and Europe and ushered in a new age of voyage and discovery. Columbus brought Louis de Torres, an interpreter, with him during his first voyage. De Torres spoke Hebrew, Aramaic, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Latin, and some Arabic because he expected to encounter what they say is Asians. Columbus felt that Torres' proficiency in Hebrew and Aramaic would be particularly useful. Okay, I'm going to stop there, right? And you can go on to read. It says, I don't need to get to that point. Just to hammer this point home really quick, because we're running out of time. So he says, because he expected to encounter Asians, Columbus felt that Torres' proficiency in Hebrew and Aramaic would be particularly useful. Okay, so now this is something important to also understand, right? To again, just to give the validity to the blacks who were brought over in the transatlantic slave trade, and the native Indians and Hispanics that are here are truly the children of God, right? Again, that we got to understand our culture and our history. So you have Christopher Columbus, right? And everybody knows that devil and what he did, all the disgusting things that he did. Okay, and he believed that he thought it was important to have an interpreter who spoke Hebrew and Aramaic. Now, why did Christopher Columbus believe that he needed to have an interpreter that spoke Hebrew and Aramaic? And there's some different speculation out there. And I'm going to read one or a couple authors' viewpoints. Okay. So now in this article, this is on I.S.U.P.K. Okay, just moving down. You can, if you read, or you start learning, oh, Slovakia. We still here. So as you start reading, if you start learning a little bit of history about Christopher Columbus, you're going to start learning that Christopher Columbus, it's stated that he spoke Yiddish. He spoke a dialect of Hebrew, and that he taught his kids certain things of Hebrew. And it was actually believed that Christopher Columbus was practicing quote unquote Judaism. He was keeping the Jewish traditions and the Jewish faith. And so there's different speculation surrounding why he did some of the things he did. But what we do know is he definitely wrote certain things in Yiddish to his children. There's different letters documenting reading certain prayers or whatever it may be in that bastardized form of Hebrew. And so here is, what is this? It's in the way. Okay, here we go. And so, yeah, as I was saying, He read certain things or wrote down different things to teach his children different Jewish prayers that they say. But here's one person's account of Christopher Columbus's his reason for his quote-unquote voyages. So this says Simon Wiesenthal suggests that the motive behind Columbus' voyage was to find a safe haven for Jews. It says people assume that King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella financed Columbus' journey, but according to Charles Garcia of CNN, two conversos, Louis de Santangal and Gabriel Sanchez, along with the prominent rabbi Isaac Arbor-Benno, took money out of their own pockets to pay for the voyage. This historical fact should raise yet another question. Why did these Jews take interest in Columbus's voyage? So it says that those people were quote unquote Jews, okay, who I believe today who would be who we would call Amalek, but I can't confirm that. But to the point of what I'm getting to, right, this is some people's suggestions as to why Christopher Columbus went on his voyage. Okay, it says Simon Wiesenthal suggests in his book, Sails of Hope, that the motive behind Columbus's voyage was to find a safe haven for the Jews. Similarly, and this is the part, right, that I want y'all to pay attention to. It says similarly, so not the same thing, but similarly, this is what some other people suggest. It says others conclude that Columbus set sail to Asia for the purpose to obtaining enough gold to finance a crusade in an effort to take back Jerusalem and rebuild the Jews' holy temple. Now check this. According to Dr. Gerard Falk, author of A Man's Ascent to Reason, he brought a Hebrew interpreter with him with the hope of locating the 10 lost tribes. You understand? And the reason that this speculation is out there is so right and so true is because of who exactly was living in the lands of North and South Central America, who was living in the Caribbean islands, right? Who was living in the West Indies, who was living in South Central America. The natives in this land were the 10 lost tribes of the nation of Israel. And we've migrated all throughout the earth in different points and times in history. You understand? And so we see the natives being here, the 10 tribes, quote unquote, the 10 lost tribes of Israel being here in North and South Central America. And then we have blacks, right? Jews being brought over to North and South Central America via the transatlantic slave trade. And there you have the Bible being so right and so true, where it was prophesied that we would be in a land of our enemy. We would be in a land under our oppressors, and that we would be free from this captivity together. And here in North and South Central America, black and brown have been oppressed for over 500 years. 400 years of slavery, and we are still slaves today here in North and South Central America. You understand? So this history class, we're just bringing out some of the migration of our people and just showing you that the Bible is so right and so true. And it also is a book of history. It's also a book of our records of where we have lived and where we've migrated. You understand? And it's just matching up with also different historians' records. Okay, so with that, we're a little over the 2-hour mark, so we're going to end the class there. Again, make sure you like, share, subscribe. I'm going to post the sign-out links in the chat. Okay, if you want to be a brother in the school, make sure you sign in, make sure you sign out. Make sure you pay your tithes, pay your 10% to Commanding General YAHANNA. All right. And keep staying tuned in with us. Like, share, subscribe. So with that, I'm going to say Shalom Israel, Yahweh Shem Shabbat Thumb, all the brothers, and Yahweh Shemar, Thumb Bashem Yahushai to all the sisters. Okay, Shalom.
Baby, no listen to no fake news, them can't. Could do all it out and them never fake news. Notice say I just be a bad bitch I get forward from with you. But the one you have be good girl them lazy.
She never did a features, R-rated. Never did a features, half naked. Me never did a piggy R-ratings. Half way, that's why me give R-ratings. She never did a features, half naked. Never did a features, R-rated. Me never did a piggy R-ratings. Half way, that's why me give R-ratings. I know every girl I wife material. I know every girl forget the juice in my seed bag. I know every girl me trust to cook my food, nor boil my tea, not even put the milk in the cereal. Me like a catty when medieval. When we wash for cook for clean and no fuss. When she hear me get a new girl, I know